America was founded on liberty and independence, and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free, and we will stay free.
Charles, this is a very mature show. We're not making any bathroom jokes.
No, we don't do that.
We don't do that.
It must be the sound department.
I don't know how that got in there. I sometimes forget to get this central thing out of the way before we shake hands, but it's lovely to see you today, Charles. It's mighty dark outside.
It is. It's threatening to rain.
It is threatening to rain. That was just a little clip from President Trump's epic State of the Union address last night. He was talking about how the United States will never be a socialist country. Bernie and Nancy looked a little disappointed about that.
Yeah, and I think AOC was not A-OK with that.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I think there are very few politicians who have the stage presence and, frankly, the gravitas, absent the fact that Donald Trump is the President of the United States, and people invest in the President of the United States typically feeling that that person is a substantial person. Forget that. I mean, to go in and give that speech the way he gave it, one of the things I really like to see in a leader is when they go into a room filled with people who are not necessarily allies, may even be enemies, and rather than tiptoe around the edges and just tell an enemy what you expect the enemy would like to hear, to say, actually, no, about the socialism bullcrap, do that down in Venezuela. And second thought, don't do that, because we're going to make sure that doesn't happen anymore in Venezuela either. I like that.
In the 1960s and the 1970s, Charles, and the 1950s, if a politician, if someone even caught a whiff of them being a socialist, that'd be the end of their career.
Yeah. Well, it depends which part of the country. I mean, Minnesota, for example, was called the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, I think was the main party, and there were quite a few socialists up there.
Huh.
But you're generally speaking, you're absolutely correct. And I thought that speech, I was a bit nervous about what it would include. But I loved the way Trump trolled virtually everybody. He had all the anchors in for lunch.
Yeah.
And there were breathless reports that, this speech is going to be shorter. It's going to be one of the shortest ever. It's not going to be much substance.
Did he tell them that?
I don't know if he told them that or not, but that's what they were reporting. And so
fake news.
Fake news, exactly. And then he goes on and on and on. And then I loved, the white suited people. I tweeted out about that.
I saw that.
You would think that somebody amongst the dimwits there would say, we talk a lot about white privilege. Why are we wearing our white privilege suits? I mean,
But it was something to do with women's suffrage, the 100-year anniversary.
Right, but it just
wasn't obvious.
It wasn't impressive, and it wasn't like they got the best seats in the House right in the center where everybody would look at them, and Nancy was wearing white, and then that new senator from Arizona was wearing pink, and that apparently cheesed off certain people among the Democrats. Why are you wearing pink, not white? Anyway, and of course, it started out, frankly, with Melania walking in there. I don't know if you remember, right after the election, there were all these people in the fashion industry saying, well, Donald Trump may be president, but his wife will have nothing to wear. Absolutely nothing. We are not going to dress Melania Trump.
Yeah.
That really, that stopped.
We no longer like money.
Yeah, exactly. And remember as well, when she went on the trip by herself to Africa, they gave all sorts of crap to her for appearing in a white outfit. I think it was in Kenya at a safari place. She was interviewed alone.
Why is that bad?
Well, how could you wear white in Africa?
Oh.
It's obviously...
It's hot, isn't it?
Probably. That's one reason.
Well, at least she's not Justin Trudeau. I understand he wore some outfit that was essentially like a Halloween costume, and he thought it was traditional Indian garb.
That's right.
Like him and his kids looked like they were going to a Purim party.
That's right. But no, I thought the speech was, remembering as well, that here's a gentleman who is he'll be 72, I believe, in June. right? It's not like he packs his calendar getting up at the crack of 11 o'clock in the morning and shooting hoops and smoking dope and having everybody else do all his work for him.
Is that Obama?
Or I didn't say that, but or going, it could be George W. Bush. I mean, going to Crawford, Texas for a great vacation.
Oh, come on, that's ridiculous. George W. Bush couldn't play basketball.
But he would go to, I mean, what kind of Nimrod goes down to Crawford, Texas for a month in August and spends his time clearing brush for a whole month? I mean, it could be fun for like a week or a day or whatever, but I think I'll go on vacation in Texas and clear brush for a month. I'm the President of the United States.
How's that a vacation?
I know,
He's become a migrant worker.
But anyway, so here's a guy who's almost 72, and he's packing in meeting after meeting, flying around the world, doing all these things at once, pushing the envelope in all aspects of, there are no sacred cows that he won't investigate, whether economically, investment-wise, politically, internationally, you name it. He views his mission as to go in and try to improve things. And, you could say that maybe the value of his holdings are going way, way up around the world as he succeeds. And so the fact that he's giving his salary to charity is really, misdirection, because eventually he and his heirs will make so much money, much more money off the asset pile that he accumulated through November 2016 or January 2017. But still, I mean, this guy's working his butt off and working his team off. And we need to remember that, most everyone else in the room, except for AOC and a few others, has, a lot more, in quotes, political experience than Donald Trump ever had.
Yeah.
And I mean, this group.
AOC has more coffee delivery experience than Trump has.
You want some fries for that? Yeah. But I actually thought that speech was, at the time, I thought it was very impressive. I think in time, as people dissect the different pieces of the puzzle that he went through, they're going to come back and say, you know what? We gave this guy an undue, gigantic 6-foot or 60-foot long shit sandwich to eat. And he just...
Mangianeros,
right.
Hero Boy.
Right. And, this person, despite the nonstop efforts of the press and the influence shapers, the intelligentsia around the world, to paint a picture that he's, out of control and doesn't know what he's doing and the world's falling apart because of him. No, that's not in fact happening.
Yeah.
And so I was impressed. There's the pink Kristen Sinema.
Oh, she's the one who wore the tall boots and they were annoyed. They all have Apple Watches.
Yeah. Yeah. And
was that the Grinch? That was the guy who ran for vice president with Hillary. What's his name again?
Tim Kaine?
Yeah,
Tim Kaine.
I mean, the Nancy Pelosi facial expressions, first of all, she looks like she's got Tourette's. She's over there, she's twitching, she's blinking, she can't sit still. It was really unbecoming of the Speaker of the House for her to she's shaking her head no when Trump says things. When he said America will never be a socialist country, Nancy Pelosi remained seated as the rest of the place gave a standing ovation.
But she clapped, didn't she? On what?
I remember that when he said it will never, she got dice around her neck.
It's fitting. Roll the dice with Nancy Pelosi.
Exactly. She's got the big fuzzy dice. I recall she remained seated, which, okay, fine, clap. But, wait, she's asleep. Oh, no, she's writing. Yeah. That was, what is this woman's name? She was at the Meadows hearing.
Is that Eleanor Holmes Norton?
Yeah.
There's Mark Whitaker.
Yeah.
But I thought it was hilarious when, at one moment in there, I think he congratulated on the 100th anniversary of the women getting a right to vote, that there's so many, this is the most number of female elected officials, and they looked around, Ocasio-Cortez, should I stand up?
Right, yeah. And once they had consent, they stood up. They didn't
up.
Immediately stand up.
But I love the way Trump said, wait a minute, you're not supposed to do that. And then they started to sit down, and he said, you don't want to sit down yet. I got another one coming.
It's great when he goes off script. He's definitely gotten better at reading from a prompter. And I've become quite interested in the response of people who are so quick to criticize someone who's actually doing something from, sitting behind their keyboard doing nothing, right. Getting up every day and giving these types of speeches in front of the world or even just in front of a few hundred people. Right. Not that easy, so.
And one of the things that Trump said, that I think he said many good things, but one thing he said that has resonated with me for a long time if I take away one observation, economic observation for the period 2001 to the present, it's that a lot of things that used to be very expensive are not very expensive anymore. So take a printer,
Yeah.
a very expensive printer that you might have bought in 2001. First of all, it's a piece of junk, unless there's a museum, you can donate it to the museum of printers.
No, you could get big office copiers and things, but they were a lot of money.
Right, they're tremendous, and they couldn't do the tricks that I guess these new computers can do, which are so cheap. So many things across the, writ large across the global economy today in 2019 are a lot cheaper than they were in 2001. So where is it written that the cost of medicine and healthcare and medical insurance absolutely has to go up? I mean, Trump's emphasis of saying, look, it's not, what we want to do is focus on the cost of healthcare.
I thought that was one of the most important things he said.
Yeah, bring that down. And the thing that people are not getting, this AOC is, she may be the darling of millennials or whatever she is, but the brutal reality, something that I noticed a while ago, is that the population, not only is the population growing more slowly in the United States than it used to, but the buckets of population are stacked up differently than they were, let's say, in 1982 through 1999. Starting around 2001-2 time frame, starting around 2001-2002 time frame, the population, the baby boomer population started, the senior population started getting to be a much bigger number, and then it grew fast. And then the 25 to 54 started to grow less slowly, and then the youth started growing very slowly. So the population of the United States is aging a lot. What does that mean? It depends, of course, individual cases, but when you
higher health care costs.
Exactly. Most people spend the highest percentage of the money that they spend over their lifetimes on healthcare in their final years. So you're shifting to a place where shouldering the actual costs of healthcare and medicine and all that are going to be front of mind for the overwhelming majority of the population, and especially amongst women over 65, because as people age, women tend to live longer than men, and so there are a lot more across the Western world and many places where there are populations of people 65 and up. There are many more women than men above 65, and so people really are going to care a lot. Not that they can walk around with some insurance sticker that says, I've got meaningless insurance that somebody else is paying for.
$7,000 deductible.
Yeah, and then when I
only go to this doctor.
Right, and I go in to get my foot fixed, and that's going to cost me $165,000.
Do you need that foot?
I had to. I had to. But anyway, so I thought that was a very interesting thing. I think I can share with the audience that I've been going on this Press TV, which is Iranian, I think it's Iranian state television, or it's somehow affiliated with the Iranian government, and they have a debate program, which I've gone on now several times, maybe almost 10 times. And I was asked to come on, I was on Monday, and they tried to get me on Sunday, and I said I can't do it, and then Monday I was on, and they called this morning and said, can you come on again to discuss, I think, Trump's speech. And I've got to believe you're sitting there as Iran, and you're watching, the second sleepaway date between Trump and Kim in Vietnam is coming up at the end of the month. You got the situation, let's just say it's fluid in Venezuela, or as they say in Texas, Venezuela. And you're sitting there in Iran, so it's getting kind of lonely over here in the axis of evil. I mean, we're going to be the only ones in that said axis.
Yeah.
And
was Iraq, Iran, and North Korea, right? According to GW.
Wasn't Venezuela in it as well? Back then with Chavez?
I thought it was
maybe it was just the three.
It was Iraq, Iran, and North Korea, and I remember thinking that's weird.
Yeah. So. What I think these people who've been running up against Trump are beginning to see is that
not working so good.
It's not such a great idea from a position of weakness. And we can talk about one thing that hasn't really been seen through the calculus. You remember, like 4 weeks ago or so, Trump said, I'm going to leave Syria, and I'm going to leave. I may want to leave Iraq, and I'm going to leave Afghanistan now. And, you know, and by the way, I just got my military spending budget up to $717 billion. And if you're sitting there, you're saying, I'm Iran, let's think, the money they were spending on Iraq, they don't have to. In Syria, they don't have to. In North Korea, maybe not. In Venezuela, maybe not. That leaves a lot of extra money for, I don't know, what, you know.
Yeah.
And what are these strange sounds I hear late at night?
Oh, that's shock and awe.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm joking, but I don't really think I don't know, this is not the topic for today, but I don't think they should be intervening in Iran. I don't think they should be intervening in Venezuela. I think there's a lot of stuff that's gone on in those two places for a long time that we shouldn't have been doing. So if there was anything I would criticize about Trump's speech, it was just the whole track that they're on with Venezuela, just announcing that this guy is the legitimate president. Somebody somewhere said it's literally like if, you know, Putin or Xi in China just said, oh yeah, Nancy Pelosi is the legitimate president of the United States.
Well, of course they could do that. I mean, but we regularly do that. You know, whether we should or should.
Yeah, it's kind of like a dick move.
Well, I would say I draw a distinction. You know, we have to put this in the pile of, let's say, Hitler, when, you know, Hitler was in theory the legitimately elected leader of
Chancellor of Germany.
Yeah, and you know, at what point does a powerful state like the United States, have an obligation to say, now wait a minute, you know? And I'm not saying Maduro is Hitler. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying you're more. It's not a casual exercise to think through, you know, how much the people of Venezuela have suffered for how long. You know, how much the people of Iran have suffered.
My question is, how much did the United States contribute to that in an effort to destabilize the government so we could take control and have more economic influence there and control their oil, et cetera?
Well, I think under Obama, he definitely, you know, I don't think they were thinking that way. I think Obama kind of liked Chavez.
Maybe, but I think they're always protecting the petrodollar, and they saw Venezuela as a strategic piece for China, for Russia, for Iran. You know, when they're trying to break up that coalition. If they have enough oil to challenge the petrodollar, and China's got the petro yuan now, and I don't know. I know you don't agree with me about this petrodollar thing.
I just think when we look into the actual assets and flows involved, that, you know, it's I believe, I would like to think, and I could be hopelessly naive and wrong on this, but I would like to think that first, the oil in Venezuela is of very low quality. Right. There's a lot of it, but it's of low quality.
So they got to refine a lot.
It's expensive to do that, and, you know, but forgetting all that, the task of trying as an English, when we still are an English-speaking predominantly country.
Okay.
You know, you'd never know it going into any store in New York City these days, but you know, trying to go and intervene in Venezuela to actually to rebuild a country that is fundamentally fallen past being in disrepair to being maybe not irretrievably so, but the amount of time and energy and attention it will take to rebuild that place. Should we be doing that or rebuilding Detroit and Canton and, you know, Poughkeepsie and places like that first, and our inner cities across this country? That's where we should be doing that kind of stuff. On the other hand, you really, I think if we go back to the Obama period, and I've written several columns about this and done different interviews on this, that one of the major failures, I think, of the Obama administration is when the people of Iran were in the streets really thirsting to shake off the yoke of the mullahs. And we did not. Had we actually, I don't know, intervene is too strong a word, but had we been more forthright, tougher, we might have been able to assist in a peaceful transition there, away from the mullahs. And as I understand the way Iran is run, the people at the top are just skimming as much as possible off the oil, you know, the foreign currency exchange sales. That stuff just goes to Swiss bank accounts and other bank accounts for all these people who are ruling that country, quote, in the name of the people, when that's not what they're really doing. And that kind of thugocracy, same thing going on in Venezuela, should not happen anywhere. And at what point do you step up and try to do something about it? And how might you step up and do something about it? And then, of course, you have that, you know, probably people do say that he was, in theory, you know, he was, in quotes, a physicist, Jimmy Carter. But
physicist?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was a nuclear something in the Navy.
Right, and before certain people came along, and let's just say that without saying their names, there are at least two of them, recent presidents, who would vie for being at least as bad a president as Carter was. But I mean, Carter in his post-presidency, I mean, he actually said that the Maduro election was legitimate.
Carter said that?
And I don't think he drinks. I mean,
Well, what was not legitimate about? How do we know?
Other than rigging the election.
Did he rig it?
That's what many people say. And again, but it is certainly rich for the crowd.
Do you think trying to drone him would qualify as interfering with the election?
I don't think we did that.
You don't think we did that? Why?
I doubt it. I mean,
why?
I doubt we would do that today.
Well, I mean, it's not like they've got anyway.
When I say we, I doubt that.
Yeah, the CIA is there fomenting.
Perhaps, but I doubt that Donald Trump's Secretary of State and he would get together and say, yeah, let's drone strike.
Get a crappy drone and kind of.
But it is a bit rich, though, to have the team that's all into supporting Mueller, looking into whether the Russians may have had influenced the elections by buying $200,000 worth of Facebook ads on. At a time when the total...
it was $4,700.
Oh, I rounded up to the nearest 200,000 or whatever.
Right.
But it's rich for that team to say, oh yeah, well, let's spend tens of millions on this. And meanwhile, topple Maduro. Get rid of the mullahs.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. No problem.
They don't mind that. They don't mind that at all. Charles, it's interesting. A lot of people have been having some complaints and things about Patreon. They don't like the removal of Carl Benjamin and some of the other stuff. So today, I have actually been able to activate Subscribestar. So for the first time today, people who want to sponsor the show can do that by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. They can still become sponsors by going to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And of course, people who want to enjoy the exclusive shows that are available only to sponsors now have two options. They've got subscribestar.com and they've got Patreon. And of course, people can send a one-time sponsorship payment to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth, but then you don't get the exclusive shows. So some people want to make sure they're doing it the other way. And we've got a huge presentation to get into. I want to talk about all the people who disagreed with Donald Trump and think that they like killing babies and letting criminals into the country.
I mean, for this political neophyte in Trump who doesn't understand anything at all about politics, obviously, right? Of course, thus spake,
Zarathustra.
Zara foolish. Here he's got the Democrats boxed in. On the one hand, they've got the Virginia situation spiraling out of control, and the Me Too movement. We'll get into that in a bit. On the other hand, you're right. They're on abortion. They seriously now are stridently trying to defend the proposition that it's okay to kill babies after they're viable. After they've been delivered. It's okay to kill them, if it's in the mother's best health interest. Now, what does that mean?
That's crazy.
I mean, because when I hear health interest, I don't believe that means solely physical health. I think what they're saying, mental health as well. And you start saying, it's an inconvenience for me to have this baby, and as people start thinking like that, it's going to derail my career. Remember Barack Obama, I'm not saying he thinks like this, but he did say, on the issue of late-term abortion, I wouldn't want my daughters to be punished with the burden of having to raise a baby at a young age. And there's so many people I know, and this happens as you age, who think they're going to have families, and then they can't conceive of a child, and they want to have children, and they're thirsting to adopt babies. I mean, so this notion that really there's an overwhelming percentage of this country would view a precious baby, even a disabled baby, a challenged baby, as a burden, is so far outside what I think the truth is. And you see the variance, I think, in this poll number, the 76% approval rating. For
the speech.
For the speech. For a speech that you notice that all the experts, the supposed experts, saying to Donald Trump, "You can't say that. You can't go there. You can't do this. You can't do that." And he says, "You know what? I listen to everything you say, and I'm from, I subscribe to 1-800. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna. I've thought about it independently. I think this is the way to go." And now you see. I mean, apparently the pundits on left-leaning, even John Roberts of Fox, was like, "Wait a minute. We've just got the number, and it's a 76% approval rating."
Exactly.
Exactly. It's like Mikey doesn't like it.
We got the peanut gallery in the hallway there. People may have noticed over the last few days, Charles, I have a new neighbor who has moved into the hallway.
That's good.
No, it's not good. They should stay in their apartment. Yeah, I mean, I guess Barack Obama's children would be burdened by not noticing that they're pregnant for 9 months.
Well, no, it's just it's just saying. I mean, I'm hardly an expert on it, but I mean, it is even for. I mean, there are of course rare cases, but you go through a process. At least my ex-wife and I went through this process many decades ago. Even back then, 30 plus years ago, you get pregnant, you find out about that, you have to wait a certain period of time, and I forget whether it was 10 weeks or 6 weeks or early in the pregnancy is typically 40 weeks. There's an amniocentesis test, and back when we did it, it was 2-dimensional, not 3-dimensional. And the first picture I saw changed my view entirely of what was in there. It was like, whoa, that is not just a bunch of germs. I mean, that's amazing. There's something there. Yeah. And that's let's call it 10 weeks. Law in the, quote, civilized world, I've had a summary told me that basically after week 20, around the world, it's pretty tough to legitimately get an abortion. We're not talking about after week 20. We're talking about week 34, week 40.
Well, they're talking about the baby coming out of the mother, being on the table, and who was that went on the radio and said...
Northam.
Right. You said, well, we'll decide to kill it. How can you even say that as a doctor? It's a total violation of the Hippocratic Oath. And also, that's murder.
You're not spelling it correctly. Northam, it's a hypocritical oath.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but seriously, doctors, I mean, you know a lot more about doctors than I do, medical doctors. And, the ones I've met who are good, they really take that oath seriously, and they are very jaundiced. I mean, they've been around the block a lot of times.
I think what Northam said is grounds for losing his medical license. He's basically said he's willing to commit murder.
Right. And we had the pleasures, perhaps not the best descriptive term, but we did have the people who put that Gosnell movie together. And you actually have that. There's that idiot from a new congressperson, I think from Minnesota, the female, who's saying that Donald Trump, by coming out against what Northam has been saying and partial birth abortion, late, or an infanticide, is trying to police women's health rights.
You talking about Ilhan Omar?
Yeah, and I mean, this is a person whose background needs to be scrutinized. There's some who argue that she committed immigration fraud, and I'm actually. I've never been to Somalia, but I've been close to it. And, Somalia is another part of the world which the residents of Somalia deserve a lot better than they have.
Oh, it's like run by warlords, isn't it?
I know. I mean, it's just, Bill Clinton's one acknowledged failure, of course, was, wasn't it Black Hawk Down?
Black Hawk Down, yeah.
Was in Somalia. And, Somalia, by just on the map, all countries end up in a certain place on the map, right? I mean, it's in a choke point near shipping lanes. You would think that the people who got behind Singapore, turning Singapore from a backwater or Kuwait or these small places that are in important shipping patterns, we look at Somalia and say, maybe we can make this work. Let's start by getting rid of all the radical Islamic terrorists, and maybe the way they did that is send them into
Congress. Yeah, it's a choke point, so perhaps they could have Ilhan Omar choke all the babies.
Right, but it's like I'm a big fan of of looking at when you're looking at a metric for something, trying to value something or evaluate something. you divide it into different pieces, and you say, okay, if this piece is important, what's the range of outcomes that's reasonable for this particular assumption and that particular assumption and that? You divide it up. You say, this is, everyone's going to be slightly different, but we care about this person's musical interest and this person's speaking ability and their math ability and this, and what's a normal place to score across these things. And you can, when you do it that way, typically you can say, well, this person is outstanding in this character and deficient in this character, and this character is important and that one's not important, so clearly we can't hire this person, or we can hire this person, or and the views that are spewing out of this group of fairly described as angry turds is just mind-numbing. I mean, it's so far away from being sensible, and again, hats off to the art department, and I guess we're going to have to do something with the rogue elements in the sound department.
Well, shall we play Who's the Turd?
I don't think we. Yeah, well, why not? Yeah.
Well, so I'm actually not personally very familiar with Angry Birds. Obviously, I'm aware of it, but I don't know that I've ever actually played it, and I've certainly never seen the movie. So I think the idea just sort of came up and we downloaded this incredibly rotund bird. I made Gerald Nadler just because he's such a crank every time he ever says anything in any of these confirmation hearings or anything like that. And although he has lost considerable weight, there were some photos I found where he was just, I can't believe he's still alive.
You mean on the Chris Christie program?
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, Chuck Schumer, had to have him in there. I mean, he's got to be the turdiest of all the turds.
Yeah, and the two of those guys, I mean, Chuck Schumer, if you check his Wikipedia entry, I mean, here's a guy who's, I don't know how old he is these days, but he's certainly in the 60s, maybe in the 70s. And last time I looked at his Wikipedia entry, he still, so whoever is managing that, I got to believe somebody in his staff has input, allows Wikipedia to reveal that he had a perfect score on his SATs. I mean, dude, that's a long freaking time ago, man.
Is that even true?
Who knows? I mean, he certainly is somebody you can imagine would have done well in college. I think he went to Harvard. I don't know where he went, if he went to law school. And Nadler, I think, also may have done well in college, academically. But the two of them, they're just so nasty.
Yeah.
I mean, and I went to a college graduation in which Schumer spoke, and it was, most of the speakers were pretty, sensible, accomplished people who made the event be about the forward plans of the graduates, life lessons learned, a 50-year-old talking to a 20-year-old or whatever. This is what I wish I could have done if I had to do it all over. Your life's in front of you, and this and Schumer was all me, 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 me. It was, the title of his speech could have been Me, Myself, and I.
How to be a turd. Would have been a good speech. I've mentioned it many times, and if there's anyone watching now who hasn't seen my encounter with Chuck Schumer on the Amtrak train from Washington, D.C. to New York, that dude is a jerk.
Yeah, he is.
So now, of course, we have AOC. For some of the people, I tried to retain the bird aspects because it started to look not too much like birds, but...
I mean, AOC, there definitely is a role for her as a bumblebee flitting around or whatever. I mean, and I have absolute...
Oh, we could have stuck a toucan in here. I forgot about that.
There'll be more for this. But I mean, I have absolutely no problem with young people leaping into positions of great authority and responsibility. It's actually how I developed my career. I started on Wall Street at 24, and by age 27 I was...
But you'd been to Yale and Harvard. You were obviously an exceptional example of someone in that field.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think you're still pretty wet behind the ears when you're 24, 25, even 29. And all I would say about AOC is that to date, I have not seen much evidence that there's a great deal of sense in the common sense department.
We could probably get you a date with her.
No.
To date, AOC. No, that could be the next episode.
No. That's
I was
wrong.
thinking of something, Charles. The her green, what is it? The Green Agenda?
The Green New Deal.
The Green New Deal. I was thinking, so she was giving students advice as to how to reduce their carbon dioxide footprint. So if you're a student I mean, how old are you? I don't know. Do you have a car? Are you riding around on planes? And also, carbon dioxide is what we exhale. Is she advising these people to breathe less? It seems like the Green New Deal is talking about the greenbacks, or perhaps how green she is. And you said wet behind the ears. That reminded me of that.
I mean, and the notion that somebody who's been in Congress, I mean, hats off to her for winning the primary and displacing the entrenched crony Democrat who she did displace. But that's a significant accomplishment. But to date, I have not seen, you wouldn't expect to see out of a congressperson who's actually been allowed to work from her office for less than a week, I think. Right? The government's been shut for most of 2019, and she's only been back for a week or so. She's got nothing to show for it, and there's no bill, there's nothing passed, she's just giving press conferences.
Well, so far she doesn't even know how Congress operates.
Yeah, details.
She's like, where's the bathroom again?
Yeah, and even some Democrats, I mean, I think it was Whoopi Goldberg was telling her, just shut your damn pie hole.
Really?
Yeah, on The View. But, and then if the best that Democrats can do is to pick, in Stacey Abrams, somebody who has not even conceded that she lost the gubernatorial race that she did lose, that's not overly impressive. And apparently there was some some trick, I guess, with her speech yesterday. Did you hear about this?
I didn't see her speech. What was the trick?
So they basically made it seem like she was speaking to a crowd, and indeed she wasn't.
It was just a few people standing way behind her. I did see that photo. Joe Napoli sent me that photo, and I didn't get it. The text said, here's the packed crowd. So what they're doing is foreshortening, they could shoot her on a long lens with very few people far away, and it seems like, oh, that must be a full room.
Yeah, it would be pretty funny to have, I don't know that we have anybody in the sound and art department who could go, say, insert her into one of these gigantic papal speeches, where there's 1 million people thronging Manila. She gets, in a 21st century 3D breakthrough, Stacey Abrams actually simultaneously addressed not just the House of Representatives, but she addressed the people of Manila. And you've got the people of Berlin, the Barack Obama speech. I don't know. But I mean, that kind of trickery, and you contrast, I've never addressed a very large crowd, maybe 1,000 people once or twice, but to go in front of that House of Representatives, with all those television cameras, with all the pressure, to command that room, it was like, this is my room. If he's getting some negative comments, the president is, for starting the speech without letting Pelosi introduce him. Yeah, she didn't.
I don't think he cares about that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, but he just basically I don't need that introduction. People know who I am.
Do you know who Kenny Chesney is, Charles?
He's a country singer?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, he had a 3D movie called, I think, Summer in 3D or something, and 21st Century 3D was brought in to do some he would rise up from the floor on this magical chair or whatever, so we were down under the stage filming him do that as the opening of the movie, and for parts of the shoot, I was like on the stage, like right next to Kenny Chesney. And obviously people weren't there to see me. Nobody even knew I was wearing like black clothing. But when you look out and there's that many people, like you walk down the street of New York City and you're confronted with a lot of humanity. Some people are bothered by that. Being one person looking out at like 50,000 or however many were there, it's an unusual experience for sure.
Right, and then and feeling the energy of the crowd.
Yeah.
You say something and you think it's going to get one reaction and it gets a very different reaction. And Trump is very, very good, gifted, I would say, at reading a crowd, milking the crowd. That speech, that event will become, I think, assuming he has 2 terms, even assuming a longer 2 terms, it will be one of the more memorable. It could be even a turning point in his presidency.
I think so. Because, like I said, I don't really agree with going and destroying Venezuela, but how could you, when he lays it out, how MS-13, and also I had in my head a conversation I had with Larry Nichols yesterday about how Daniel Ortega went from street gang leader to president of Nicaragua, and he described how MS-13 could potentially do the same exact thing here in the United States of America. And when you hear a Yale study that says there's between 16 and 26 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. Larry pointed out, if 5% of them decided to act in a coordinated manner with nefarious plans, you've got a million-strong army already here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he came across as truly the grown-up in the room. And the other thing that was interesting was to see how all those career politicians were behaving. I mean,
they looked very nervous.
Well, earlier in the day, I think yesterday, there were reports out of D.C. that Mueller's team had actually been going after Manafort's and Podesta and Mercury, the various lobbying firms. They're pinching in on those people. So I think Trump definitely pitched that as, I am anti-swamp, said he to the swamp.
Exactly. He's in the swamp saying that.
I'm against you guys, right? Yeah. But my army, not yours. My army, right? Yeah. And my military. And anyway, he definitely set it up. He said, look, I wouldn't go into this investigate all the time routine. And we've learned, of course, we'll get into it later.
That they just exactly what right away they did.
So I think he definitely pitched that up, thinking miles ahead, days, weeks, months, and years ahead. That, all right, you want to F with me? Okay, I came to you with a whole, out of what he said, the laundry list of things that are out there, the infrastructure bill, the healthcare, if you can't put together a deal to give Donald Trump whatever, you call it whatever hell you want to call it, but it's a barrier on the South. You can't come up with a way to spend $5.7 billion, and then a whole bunch of other stuff that you might want for your different pet projects, get the infrastructure bill done, get a whole bunch. If you can't do that, then I think America is quite fine with a closed government.
Right,
frankly.
Because it's dysfunctional and it's just paying for them to all go on vacation and buy Apple Watches.
Exactly. So
just to round out the turdography real quick, Charles, the last three, of course, we've got Mueller in here with the traditional Angry Birds.
Nice teeth.
Eyebrows. Yeah, they got the beak on there. And then this was one I was worried, I didn't know if this read as Nancy Pelosi. And then, of course, possibly the most successful in terms of my execution from an artistic standpoint. The biggest failure, of course, is Hillary, the ultimate turd.
And if you think about it, it's interesting that Hillary hasn't really said much
about the speech.
About this, I would have thought that one of the first people you would go to in the mainstream media to get a sense of, is the person who lost to Donald Trump. What's your reaction? And the fact that they haven't, maybe in the last little while they've crafted some reaction, but I didn't see anything when I was preparing for the show today.
She should have come out and said, why aren't I 50 points ahead?
That's right.
It was fantastic when Trump said if he hadn't been elected president, we'd be at war with Korea right now. Right. I think he's right.
I think he's dead right.
It's very possible for sure. And with that, Charles, I think perhaps we should
let's
dive right into the presentation. But that's a lot to discuss and a worthy discussion.
Yeah. So one thing, people know I'm a numbers person, not really an English person or a writing person. So when you come to me and you say we've got a problem with government, it's not working, it's not effective, the first thing I say is, all right, well, how much money are we spending on government? It's a reasonable question. I've mentioned before that Hannity focuses on the federal $4 trillion alone. And you can't do that because so much of government spending is at state level. It's often mandated by the federal government. So we've created a system where nobody seems to really be responsible for government spending, but at least there are these Bureau of Economic Analysis, so-called National Income and Product Account tables that show you, when you look into the fine print, that we basically spend, in the most recent period, more than $7 trillion a year. Now, is $7 trillion a lot of money, people might say. $7 trillion is a shit ton of money. Yeah. That's a very technical term.
Yeah.
And think about the total economic output. Somebody was saying that there are 100 billion, I think, tweeted out that according to some place that she was looking, there are 195 countries in the world, counting Taiwan and the Holy See, the Vatican. There are only 195. I think when you look into the CIA World Fact Book, they have more like 230, 240 because they count these little islands and stuff.
They want more places to invade.
I guess so. But, in all, whatever long list you want to take, be it the 193 to 5 list or the 230 list, there are 2 countries at last count out of that mix whose citizenry produces in a given year economic output, all told, of their government, their businesses, the households. Only 2 in the world produce more than 7 trillion a year in total economic output during the whole world. So the whole year. So why in the
U.S.
hell?
and Japan, U.S. and China.
China and the U.S. There's only 2. So and China, you know, people are saying that the statistics for China
It's a fake 7 billion. 7 trillion.
it could be, yeah, pretty fake. So here we are, we're spending 7 trillion a year, and the group in that room is saying, you know, we need more money. We're spending 7 trillion, but Il Trumpo can't have 5.7 billion to make sure that American citizens are not run over by MS-13 and other gang members. It's just, to be put into that position to have to defend the opposite of what Trump's saying.
Yeah.
Only an idiot would go down the course of trying to defend it.
And not to contradict what you're saying, but it's so often presented as, oh, give 5.7 billion to Trump. And everyone has been so brain programmed with, no, we hate Trump, don't give him anything. You're not giving anything to Trump. It's give 5.7 billion to prevent. I've been watching a lot of interviews with border agents.
Oh, yeah.
And they're, you know, I see people, I was in LA, I saw people wearing Abolish ICE t-shirt. It's like, okay, you want to abolish the police? Let me see you get held up at gunpoint, and what's the first thing you're going to yell?
In California, they're going to be walking around pretty soon with shirts that say "abolish lice," because that's going to be a big problem for them.
But these guys are talking about how they're part of their time they're retrieving dead children from the desert because they're just dehydrated and they dump them out, and they get 12-year-old girls with birth control pills because their parents know they're going to get raped. So, I mean, all these people who are saying like walls don't work. It's like, okay, you can't take an SUV with like 6 people in it over a wall. And it does take time to climb over a wall, and perhaps there can be a drone that says, hey, there's somebody climbing over the wall, and the amount of time it takes them to get there, it's about thwarting. There's never been a form of security invented that can't be circumvented, but when we have huge lapses in security, obviously we've got to beef up the security as best we can. A wall makes a lot of sense. We're not giving $5 billion to Trump where it would save money for us.
Well, and, you know, another great regret I think historians will have about the Obama years, and I don't think that just because you're the first African American you should care more about slavery, but I think that in 2019, certainly, it is absurd that these people who gather in Geneva, always the fine dining cities, you know, they never get together for UN. They say, oh, we're going to get together in, I don't know, pick a place, you know, rural Yemen, you know, to discuss the future of human trafficking. It's always Paris or Geneva or whatever. Right. For all these people flying private, flying first class, staying in the fancy hotels to have all these conferences.
I hope they're holding their breath on the flight to reduce the CO2 output.
Yeah, I mean, they should be saying, look, we're not going to have any more plenary sessions on bullshit, you know, unregulated globalism until there's no slavery. There should not be slavery in 2019. Now, maybe you could say the United States doesn't have the moral authority to lead that effort. Maybe you could say we do, and we're going to put some real might behind it. So to have an unprotected southern border, inviting not just people from Mexico and Honduras and Nicaragua, but from around the world, they notice this.
Yeah.
You know, they fly in. Well, I have friends who've written great articles about it, people from the Radical Islamic group, other terror organizations. Chinese people are coming across the southern border. I mean,
this is just world famous for being easy as hell.
Right, exactly. And there's all kinds of coyotes who can get you across, and you know, and that's just, you can't be, you know, having a fancy, frankly, State of the Union speech and all this kind of stuff when you don't get that basic job done. Are we a nation or not? Do we have borders or not?
Yeah.
You know, try going into Nancy Pelosi's house. She has a wall.
Yeah.
It's locked.
Oh, I thought that was also really interesting. The president gave Laura Loomer sort of a ghost shout out when he was talking about certain lawmakers who live behind walls. I thought that was definitely
Double
geared
L.
towards Laura.
Yeah. So the other thing that was really refreshing is that, you know, Trump is obviously a self-promoter. You could say he's an aggrandizing self-promoter. I mean, that's true. And he'd probably say, you know what? You're right. I'm the best of the world.
Yeah.
I'm the best of the world.
He'd say, I'm the president, you're not.
Exactly. Yeah. But, I mean, that speech was a lot about his accomplishments in the face of resistance.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't we can't look at this. It's like, you go out and you say, well, I ran an X minute mile, and I had a headwind.
Yeah.
60-mile-an-hour headwind, or
no shoes, through the glass
in the winter, or a 60-mile-an-hour tailwind. You're going to get different results,
right?
And this guy has, you can say rightly or wrongly, he's invited not 60 mile an hour. They're hurricane force, cyclone force, Noah's Ark flood force headwinds, and in spite of all that, while this person complains and Paul Ryan did him no favors, and I think Mitch McConnell's not doing him much favor either. With all that, he was able to discuss a large number of serious accomplishments that no other president was able to do, and he actually got them done. And he's only halfway through his first term.
Another good thing that he did that I thought was really interesting was he had those two people who had been released on this new prison program really where you can reach certain milestones in prison and reduce your sentence. That makes sense to me because, we've heard so much about how there's more prisons and they're filling up and people are being wrongfully imprisoned and they're for-profit prisons and we have more people in prison than any other country. And by showing, hey, this guy became a law clerk and a priest or whatever, it's like, I hope people in prison can see that on TV and maybe think, hey, there's a way out of this. Or someone who's thinking about going into crime, maybe that guy goes around telling them how bad prison is and how you don't want to go. We want to rehabilitate criminals.
Right. And also the touching shout out to the veterans.
Veterans, the little girl with cancer.
Right. It was. Yeah, I thought it was a substantive speech. Yeah. And I thought it was. I'm not surprised that 76% approve of it.
Yeah,
and that was a CBS.
That means 24% want to kill babies and allow criminals in.
That's good to know, right?
But who are those 24%?
Yeah, that's right. So if we go perhaps to the next page, just to quickly cover our standard disclaimer, this show is a different type of show. We're not trying to do we're trying to do the opposite of what
Hence the title for today.
Right. And what we try to bring you around the theme of exposing and moving authorities to actually do something about the largest set of unprosecuted charity frauds in history, what we try to do is bring you real hard evidence that you can look for yourself. We try to assimilate it, lay it out for you, give you a chance to check it. We're getting increasing traffic. We really appreciate, Jason and I, the traffic we get from viewers who give suggestions, and we try to respond quickly and thoughtfully to all constructive criticism and suggestions. But really, this has been a journey. This is, I think, our 141st. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's the number. Well, we can check the playlist if you like.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Charles, while I bring that up, someone put into the comments here, end dual citizenship representation. Now, I've heard that a lot, but mostly just from, unattributed comments on the internet. Have we ever seen any evidence that there are these congressional representatives who are dual citizens?
I don't know about that. I did add on that subject. I mentioned I bought that Louis Freeh's book, My FBI, which is, think about it, a little bit presumptuous, the title of the book, My FBI. But anyway.
Well, that reminds me of last week's episode. Oh, My FBI. I can't see.
That was really...
But we've got all the episodes of Sunday with Charles and Charles Ortel is closing in here in the playlist on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel, which mysteriously has been hovering. It can't seem to get over 79,830. There's a very anomalous behavior when I compare the 2 years prior. Normally it just generally goes up. Now, granted, there are some setbacks, a couple here, there. If I get into some sort of gigantic mess with somebody, sometimes it goes down a little bit. But this is, I don't know what to make of this. People were telling me they were experiencing some strange things in the live chat earlier today. I noticed there were some trolls who are blocked and remain blocked, but they were able to comment in the live chat. When I went to block them again, it already was blocked. It said unblocked. So I don't understand what YouTube is doing when they allow blocked people to still view the videos and comment. What is the point of blocking?
So you were fake blocking.
Exactly. It's like a Jerry Seinfeld rental car reservation.
That's right.
They're not actually having a reservation if the car isn't there.
Yeah, so this is what we do. We try to pitch this show to investigators. We're trying to save you time, believe it or not, though this is now the 141st, probably 2-hour show. On balance, when you go through all this material, you'll find out, I think, that we are saving you a lot of time. And we are inexorably moving towards a place where justice will be served. And
I don't know if you saw this, but Matthew Whitaker was in Brooklyn yesterday attending the trial of El Chapo.
Oh, is that right?
I wish I would have gone there. I'd like to talk to Matthew Whitaker. And I'm interested to see El Chapo as well. You know, it means...
El Chapo, not so much.
It means the Chapo in Spanish. But Charles, people can also send you messages on Twitter. You're on there at Charles Ortel, and they can contact me at CS The Truth and follow us both there. And lots of interesting tweets coming out daily. So that's a good resource for people in addition to the playlist.
Great. So we'll just fly through this. This BuzzFeed, I mean, clearly does not have, at this stage, legal representation that knows what they're doing. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And this came out yesterday, and there's a link. This guy, Jason Leopold, is stuck on stupid.
What is stuck on? It's like hooked on phonics?
Yeah, he's stuck on stupid. But here we have, I don't know, this is from the link itself it's in red, or is it?
Well, this is just in the article. If you want to take a look at the, I do have the PDF. I downloaded it because when you brought this to my attention yesterday, I was speaking to Michael Moore about it, and we went through it a bit. What is it called? Let me just find it real quick here. It was just called like Trump something. Anyway, I was looking at it and I discovered quite a few anomalies there. Here it is, Trump Moscow.
Yeah.
So I don't know where they got that first image, but you know, this is released, you know, anytime anybody sees a release with these emails that are redacted, it feels like you're looking at something, you know, super top secret, and we get a lot of construction stuff here.
I mean, I don't want to say incriminating, but the most suggestive email I thought was on page 202.
Let's go to that.
And you know, this is a lot of. First of all, we don't know what may be missing here. We don't know if this is truly authentic. We don't know how BuzzFeed got this information. One certainly hopes that the grand jury is not leaking it. And Mueller, et cetera. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. This is from Felix Sater to Michael Cohen on the 3rd of November, 2015.
Should we tell people who Felix Sater is?
Yeah, Felix Sater is, I believe, a Russian origin person who's moved to the United States, who is, you know, was not fixer, he's a business guy with ties to powerful Russians. And he was basically working the Russian angle to try to concoct a deal with Michael Cohen. Now, the way, in my experience, I mean, I never tried to do a deal in Russia, but I've tried to do deals around the world. And the BuzzFeed people are evidently people who have no clue how to do a deal. So you start out and you have an idea of how you're going to get a deal done, and people with somebody like Trump, before he ran for president, he probably had an inbox filled with people. So let's do the Beirut Tower, and let's do this tower, and that tower, and another tower. And so there's a stream of these things that come to you, and you have to say, well, should I have Cohen focus on this or not?
Right.
And we don't know if this is...
There's a first process of even just figuring out, is this serious?
Right, and we don't know whether this is Trump was directing Cohen to do this, or Cohen was, you know, trying to be better than Trump, trying to put some deal. We just don't know yet. We do know that Michael Cohen is a proven liar. That we know.
Right.
So anyway, and here's something. You notice this? I don't see that typeface. Get that clip? Do you see that? CNBC debate moderators then say, get that clip. That is not, that's inserted.
You think so?
That's absolutely not the same typeface. And
It
I'm no
looks
typefacer.
bigger. It looks bigger.
It,
All caps.
it's a different font.
It does seem different.
And
You're
NBC,
right.
yeah, it's
You're right.
And it's just it's obvious that they, and in their typo, most people, when they email, do it quickly and they're typos and they make a decision, do I want to go, fix this or not, but Michael is not spelled that way.
Well, it's also, this has been printed out from the email and then rescanned. And I noticed this when I was dealing with some of the material that Larry Klayman sent me from his FOIA lawsuit, which is also against Robert Mueller's special counsel office. Now, I don't know if people watching at home can see this, but it's very apparent on the television that we're looking at here. Here we go. So you see as I zoom in, Charles, all these dots around the text. So this is an email. Right? If you and I were working together on a project and you said, hey, Jason, send me all the emails from whatever, I would want to send them to you in a way that would be most convenient for your research, which would mean leaving the email as text.
Right.
So you could say, show me all the occurrences of Michael Cohen, bing, 257, you find it right away. What these guys do, and it's done deliberately to frustrate the opponent on the other side of this this discovery production. They print it out on a sheet of paper and then they scan it at very low resolution so that it's sufficient to be read, but this would be very, very difficult to do optical character recognition and turn it back into text, because all of these dots essentially act as countermeasures to that process, and it's so low resolution. So yeah,
but doesn't it look as if that is different than this?
It does look like.
And in fact, look at this. This America's most difficult. I mean, it looks like they smushed together.
I mean, again, this is from a critical analysis standpoint. This is so low resolution that it becomes difficult to determine some of those things. It is curious that this part of it, if you notice, this part has a lot of dots around it, and the rest of it has almost no dots. That's more disconcerting to me, because if it's printed out on the same page, how did that occur?
Right, and then we have this, this is supposedly from Felix. ISIS, oil, Middle East, et cetera, we can own this election. Michael, my next steps are very sensitive with Putin's, it looks different, very, very close people. We can pull this off. Michael, let's go. 2 boys from Brooklyn getting a USA president elected. This is good, really good. Thank you. And up here, you see from Felix, let's black that Seder out. And we look down here, thank you, Felix Seder.
Yeah.
It's like,
I didn't understand that. Maybe it's his email address that they don't want you to have. Because it probably, because see right here it says Felix, and then this is probably his email address that they're blacking out.
Got the signed, and then here's on November 3rd, I'm on a plane to Nassau. I spent 8 days with the rich banker. Love the Putin-Russia reference.
I'm more interested in the areas where dots appear. Why do we have these weird dotted areas? Like, this should be a document produced in an office, printed. First of all, I think there should be technical requirements for how these documents are produced, and if something is an email, it should be presented as a searchable PDF.
Well, let's stay on this just for a second.
Yeah.
So, November 3rd, 2015, at 12:40 and 21 seconds p.m., okay? What was happening on November 3rd, 2015? I should answer it slightly different and ask the question. What wasn't happening? James Comey and the FBI were not investigating the Clinton Foundation the way they needed to do it.
Yeah.
And yet the FBI had opened up on July 10th, 2015, months before this. They'd opened up into an investigation of how Hillary Clinton, who then was the putative favorite to win the election of 2016, they'd opened up, in theory, an investigation of why Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton family had owned and taken control of all of the government records that flowed through the State Department on private servers. Okay, here's one email that we're going to make an issue of. What about who knows how many emails that were under the custody and control of people who were not actually in the line of control in the U.S. government, that being the Clinton family, the hangers-on to the Clintons, the people who operated the toilet bowl servers and all that. I mean, this comes out of BuzzFeed, and you're like, oh, Russia.
Huge deal.
You got to look at this first of all, is it even real?
Well, that's what I want to address, because maybe it's real, but I find there are a lot of people who like to juxtapose facts to make them appear to represent something that they don't. So here's an email from Michael Cohen
On behalf of
to unknown on November the 2nd. And I mean, to me, this just reads like a generic email from a lawyer about an agreement that hasn't been executed yet. He's saying it's extremely important that the nature and content of the attached LOI not be disclosed until such time as parties have either concluded the definitive agreement documents or have agreed to mutual statement. We are truly looking forward to this wonderful opportunity and project. That sounds like the standard email he would send to anyone who he's engaged in a letter of intent. But then look at this, Charles. Here's an email from, this is an indication that somebody that got emailed, it didn't get received. Right. And it's weird that we don't know who that's from.
Stop for a second. That's in a different typeface. Right there.
Well, but again, that's what I mean. When they print it out, you know, this is much higher resolution actually than some of the other stuff we were looking. Well, maybe it's about the same, but yeah, it gets printed out. It's a very sloppy process that can introduce a lot of stuff. But then we have this like standalone email that he is sending, Felix is sending to Michael Cohen. We don't have a response from Cohen saying, yeah, great, let's rig the election. Felix Sater could send this to Michael Cohen, and then there's no response. So he could send this to Michael Cohen just to fill his email inbox with incriminating looking information. You know, George Webb has sent me emails and texts that at the time I was like, what the hell is he talking about? This doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Same thing with other people who I won't mention. Right. But now I believe I understand. These people are hoping to plant these communications in your email inbox and then later initiate some sort of legal action where you notice how they're all so adamant about, oh, we're going to go to Discovery and see all your emails. Bring out some email like this, put it into a pile of crap like BuzzFeed and get everybody going nuts. But luckily we haven't heard anything about this today, which I think means this is a pile of garbage, because wouldn't the New York Times and the Washington Post seize on this if there was anything there?
Yeah, I mean, I long ago stopped trying to understand why and how the New York Times and other Washington Posts and the like are, quote, managed or edited. But anyway, I think this pile of documents, it's interesting that it came out. I don't really see anything all that inflammatory in it. That doesn't mean we won't have nonstop wall-to-wall coverage about, you know, Trump's going down.
BuzzFeed. I don't know.
And
the other thing I noticed was, you know, and we spoke about this on the Patreon show More Pain, but we've got the article opens with this red Donald Trump signature, which you see all these dots in here. There's no pen that you would use that would put dots in there. They look to be very much of a pattern. So this is some sort of computer anomaly, either JPEG compression or something. And I have never seen, I'm sure you've seen many more legal contracts than I have, but I've never seen one printed in red.
So I guess that's because I've never done a deal in China, maybe in red China.
Or in blood, for that matter.
Or blood, that's right.
But on top of a picture with I mean, this whole thing is just a concocted, inflammatory, false piece of crap, like all of BuzzFeed.
Especially this guy, Jason Leopold. I mean, he's
I don't know him.
Well, he's in the center of all this mess. He's the one who, what was the last BuzzFeed thing that he had to
well, that was where they said that they had this information that Michael Cohen was told by Trump to lie, and Peter Carr, for the first time ever, said something other than no comment. He said that's false.
He said, like, shut up.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is worth, though, taking a gander. And then if we go into there's this issue been raised. I'd hit the second link, if you would. The Zero Hit story is just a bit longer. So we've talked about this in the past, and I'm actually, maybe Donald Trump's not too happy about prosecutors taking a look at the Trump inaugural committee solicitation and financial report for the party that occurred in January of 2017. But there are ancient laws and traditions that say that a president is at his most vulnerable to corruption in the early period after the election when he's getting inaugurated. That's when people who want favors out of a president are going to descend en masse, saying, all right, a million is not so bad, I'll give you $1 million for this, I just want $100 million back this way or another way. So it's entirely fair and proper that prosecutors might take a look at the inaugural committee, which was a lot more expensive than Obama's. That said, if you're going to go down this track, I want to know why I was denied access by our government to the 1997 inaugural committee report for the Clintons. The same idea back in 1997. They were supposed to have a report out by, I think, April of 1997, detailing all the donors and the disposition of the cash to what suppliers or whatever. And that's centrally important because that committee was, I believe, or they're trying to hide it, but I think that committee was the single biggest donor, recorded donor to the Clinton Foundation in 1998. And I want to understand how a committee that went out of existence in theory in 97 could have ended up making a donation in 1998 and be the largest donor by far. Almost 80% of all the money that went into this thing, in theory, in 1998 came from a similar committee. So if you're going to make, and I actually contacted the author of CNN, who's been bugging me. She's one of the people bugging me about the email that I sent to James Rosen and Judge Knapp. And I said, listen, if you're going to cover this, you got to cover the 1997 Clinton inaugural committee.
The title of the article could be, "Where's the Money, Lebowski?"
Exactly. Yeah. And then this is something you were talking about earlier, Jason, I think yesterday. Roger Stone's lawyer came out, and I don't understand this exactly, but he's got proof, apparently, that
CNN was tipped.
Yeah, it was definitely tipped. How did they get the Roger Stone indictment before it was made public, before it went on Pacer? How did they do that?
Right. Well, first of all, yeah, that's the proof. I loathe the word proof, but that's the evidence that he has, is that CNN had a document that doesn't have the docket stamp from Pacer.
Yeah, and this is Sarah Murray, is the person I also contacted.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the question now becomes, would it be illegal for the FBI to tell CNN, or is it just stupid and reveal that they did it on purpose?
Again, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know, but I just think there's a certain amount of evidence here that the media has been fed a narrative by people who want to topple Trump and people who want retribution for Hillary Clinton's ass whooping. I mean, that I think is absolutely the case. And grand jury proceedings are on purpose supposed to be confidential, right. And that could be Andrew A. Weissman, right?
Well, that's, I think, what they're saying, is that this is Andrew Weissman sending it the day before it went into Pacer. When was he arrested? The 24th or the 25th?
I don't remember. But in the morning, I thought, right?
Well, but CNN hasn't alleged that they got it from Pacer. I mean, all of this evidence is compelling evidence that CNN was tipped off. The question that needs to be answered is that illegal for the FBI to do?
I don't know. Could well be. It's certainly, Sidney Powell would tell you, her book tells you, that Andrew Weissman's MO is to manipulate the press, is to whip up public opinion against a defendant in the hopes of basically swaying the jury when it comes time to trial. Of course he's guilty. And that's his MO. This guy, Weissman, needs to be disbarred,
absolutely,
investigated, and then put into prison.
Yeah, look, Andrew A. Weissman, so there he is. That's got to be him, AAW.
Yeah.
There's not that many W last names, and not that many people with A for the first letter. That's got to be him.
And I won't go into the gutter and speculate as to what the second A stands for, but I've got a pretty good idea.
Aaron?
No.
A.
It's something to do with whooping.
Yeah.
Anyway, or clown.
Yeah.
So, it's very clear that the special counsel team has got a media strategy, to put it politely.
Well, yeah.
And then it's also clear this OIG report came out, it's a very short one, I believe it came out yesterday, that some unnamed FBI supervisory special agent was making false representation, working for a contractor, accepting gifts from an applicant, misusing all sorts of the government vehicle and a cell phone. And what the special prosecutor, the OIG has decided, we're not going to investigate it.
Why make a report about it then?
Prosecution of the SSA was declined. The OIG has completed its investigation and provided the report to the FBI for appropriate action. This is under Trump's FBI. that this is going on. I mean, either this stuff is important, either FBI agents need to be held to a very high standard, or they don't. You're going to say, yeah, we found all kinds of misconduct. We're going to prosecute it? Nah.
No sensible prosecutor would do it.
Why
all
not?
the sensible prosecutors are just sending their documents to CNN.
Exactly. Exactly. Not good.
Yeah.
And
I wonder if sensible and effective go hand in hand.
Exactly. And then we have this Dopey James Comey comment. Where does this guy get off making a comment that there's zero chance Hillary Clinton gets prosecuted for her emails?
Wow.
I mean, is this just telling us that Comey installed all the people who might otherwise prosecute Hillary?
And he just said that.
February 5th at midnight.
Man, brazen.
Yeah.
James Comey.
And
what a dope.
It's just.
Well, I hope that Trump will also fire Christopher Wray, because obviously the FBI is not doing really any much better than it was under Dopey Comey, which was basically as good as it was under Dopey Mueller.
Then this Cory Booker, I mean, I know he announced to considerable fanfare that he's got a boo, which I gather is slang for a girlfriend. Mm-hmm. But apparently he whipped himself into another Spartacus moment to attack this judicial nominee, to ask her, how many LGBTQ law clerks do you have? And this woman just looked up and said, Senator, I'm not a judge.
That is so funny. He's such a dummy.
He really is.
Michael Moore dubbed him Mr. Peanut yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. It took a little getting to understand how he got that nickname. But
if you're going into a tough fight, and you need wise counsel, and you got a choice between bringing into the room a box of rocks and Cory Booker, I'd take the box of rocks. At least you could throw them at somebody.
Exactly.
And then this is a horrible story here. This other Zero-Head story about now the lieutenant governor of Justin Fairfax of Virginia stands accused. Somebody has made what seem to be credible allegations of unwanted sexual contact 15 years ago. This is a professor like, what's her name, Ford?
Everybody's after the professors.
But the response, I think, is available. So there it is.
Oh.
And I actually do think that we need to have all these allegations need to be taken seriously, and if it turns out that people are making false allegations, as I would argue could have happened with Ford, this is not. And John Allen, D.C., I think is Jonathan Allen. This is something that. We need to do. We need to be consistent about this, right? It is not right to give cover to the Clinton wing of the, Democratic Party. And I noticed that Dick Morris did one of his titillating stories yesterday or today that he's revealing that he knew that while Morris was briefing Clinton by phone, that Monica was attending to Clinton's needs at the same moment.
Who knew that?
The appropriately named Dick Morris.
Now, here's our Mr. Peanut saying about these, he was right in there on Kavanaugh, and here is a woman who, I don't know anything about the allegations, but certainly they're at least as credible as Blasey Ford's, because even someone who had nothing happen has allegations that are as credible as hers. And he says, forget it, don't talk about that.
And this is from who? Senator Booker's press aide, Mr. T. He, or whatever, Alan He. I don't know, I'm just making a joke. And then Joe Scarborough.
Oh,
he really needs to give up.
Well, yeah, exactly. He's like, he's going to start a class on what to do with interns that make sexual assault allegations.
Yeah, this is not a great moment, Washington D.C. or Virginia.
No.
And apparently also there's now out of all this, should the lieutenant governor bounce out of the picture, then it turns out a Republican becomes governor. And now I want to just take a second here on Hiawatha, because this story it just got a lot worse for her. I mean, it would be one thing if she discovered late in life that she thought she was a Native American, and but this is showing that when she registered for the Texas State Bar, as she was getting out of law school, she said she was an American Indian, and I'm more of an American Indian than she is, and I'm not. I've got
Native American,
whatever, It's just, and this isn't just okay. I mean, we got a communication from a great viewer who pointed out, and I was at Harvard, not law school, but business school from '78 to '80, and that was a time when the law school was under attack because its faculty was principally white and male, and its faculty was principally from the top law schools, the 10 top law schools in America. And here's somebody, I mean, no disrespect meant here, I'm sure there were plenty of very smart people who went to the University of Houston and got a BS, which is appropriate for Hiawatha. But Rutgers Law School, back when she went, was not a particularly great place to go to law school.
So I thought this was her grade, it's her sex.
and to say here, and I believe it's her handwriting, American, and it looks like, did she write in Indian afterwards? But anyway, American Indian.
Well, American can't be a race.
Exactly. Well, I don't know. Who knows? But and wait a second. How does she sign?
Warren.
What does it say? Usual signature is this Warren?
I think there's an E at the beginning there, right?
Oh, is there an E there? Okay, E Warren. But I'm not overly impressed here. And if what actually happened here is that she was a tool of the people at Harvard who wanted to make it seem as if Harvard was being more inclusive, so he said, okay, rather than get a real American Indian, we'll get a cigar store Indian, who's willing to do anything to get to teach here at Harvard, and and let's let her get all the joy of being able to say. When you say you're a professor at Harvard Law School, that is a big effing deal,
right?
And you get an immediate chop for that, and you probably get all sorts of your pay probably goes way up from whatever she was making.
You can have coffee at that fancy club. Right,
and you get to hang out and hobnob and get speeches and book deals and all this kind of stuff. And who knows how much work she really had to do. And now we see what it is, how she benefited from falsely attributing an ethnic background, which is about as reasonable as me saying that I'm a world famous expert on Chinese cooking because I was born in Shanghai. I mean, it's ridiculous what she did here. And Harvard does have a process where they can go back and look into this, and maybe it's too embarrassing for them to think about it today, but as somebody who just spent a couple of years at Harvard a long time ago, I'm incensed by this. This person, just for the Harvard side of it, needs to have her credentials taken away. There's a process by which you can be excised from the records of Harvard when you do egregious behavior. It's not like she was trying to teach it, even the business school. She was going to a place where she's teaching law. It kind of matters what you say under oath in law for the system of law. We're going to get into that in a second. And this example needs to be front and center. You can't, she shouldn't be doing Periscope beer drinking interviews.
It's Miller time.
to try to be cool, when just gloss over the fact that she pretended she was an Indian to get a job, or Native American, to get a job. Now she's going around apologizing for it, and I guess trying to virtue signal, saying, I was really bad, and now I'm repenting.
Okay, now all the money and all the status that you have came from that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry about
Doesn't matter now.
It's near the end of my life. I mean, we need to be, whatever. This person...
She's not even going to make it to the primaries.
I think you're right. But I hope she,
her political career is over.
She needs to resign from the Senate.
Yes.
This is
a major lie.
Because the other reason that this is a real problem is that there are a lot of very talented people from all backgrounds, but people who are, let's say, we would say they were a minority or a disadvantaged background, whatever you want to call it. There are plenty of people. I know a number of people like that who, like Tiger Woods, they didn't want to win a golf tournament because they're disadvantaged. They wanted to win a golf tournament because they wanted to beat the living crap out of every other golfer and be the best in the world, straight up. No matter what. No matter what, exactly. And this the idea that Harvard, the Harvard faculty and the Board of Overseers and the rich people who are out trying to raise all kinds of billions of dollars for Harvard would say that one of the most prominent recent, lecturers, professors of Harvard is an esteemed, in theory, was a front runner to be president of the United States, that we're going to let Harvard's good name be trashed by this behavior it's a nice picture. It's straight up wrong, and it's not enough to kind of apologize now that you're living in a mansion and
she's got to step out, right?
Yeah,
she should give the mansion to
Laura Loomer.
Well, exactly, Laura Loomer. I was going to say some Native American nation, and I don't know.
Yeah. So then we have this interesting. I thought of you when I lifted this one from American Thinker, and I do commend to people who are not familiar with American Thinker. It's not just because I occasionally write from time to time. I'm the least well known of people involved with this, but there are a lot of very talented people write for American Thinker, including Thomas Lifson. But this is all about. Apparently, this claims that in Generation Z, more people are getting their news from Pew News, which is that guy you were talking about, PewDiePie, than are from the mainstream, from CNN and MSNBC combined.
Oh, wow.
And it talks about, you mentioned this issue of the new Attorney General in New York is trying to stop people selling followers and likes.
Yeah, that's a good thing to do.
I think that is a good thing.
Well, he's got to, it's YouTube that's got to be held accountable.
Right.
They should pretty easily have a way to detect that.
Right. But so the thing that I would say here is that these gigantic market cap companies, Facebook and Google, and that depend on followers, to sell their advertising, if their metrics are just in fiction,
right,
that's a serious crime. That's not like a small little deal. You've got people buying Facebook and Google stock on false pretenses in the droves. You've got funds doing that. You've got all kinds of people being defrauded. This type of operation could be yet another perfect way to launder money. Oof. And this is some real news about fake news.
It's true. And Charles, when I've brought this topic up, the trolls who utilize these fake accounts and fake likes, they say, oh, yeah, you're just complaining. But you've just raised some excellent points. I mean, I'm dealing with just my one channel where there's these, fake accounts coming, but multiply that by all the different channels on all these different social media things. And what if half of each of them is fake?
Oh, yeah, well, that's what some people are saying. Now, this is a hysterical one. This is a real story on Reuters. A USB stick has been found in frozen seal poo.
Ooh,
this comes out, the day of the...
Perfectly appropriate for our TURDS show.
Well, that's why I put it up. And a thought occurred to me, my bitter and twisted mind. Maybe that's where the missing emails were.
Right. A seal ate it. So the questions are...
the mind
races,
just,
yes.
Yeah.
How did, first of all, someone happen to be just looking through some seal poo and say, oh, is that a USB stick? Yeah. Oh, no, that's just a Baby Ruth bar.
Holiday photos, a frozen slab of seal poo.
Scientists in New Zealand have way too much time on their hands.
And more to the point, they find this so-called scat.
Right.
And they say, what we'll do? We'll store it in a refrigerator for a year.
Concealed deep inside the scat was a USB stick.
I mean, can you imagine, how do they assign, resources in this research lab? You're like, Jason, we love you.
You're in charge of the poo.
Check out the seal poo. Give me a full report on that poo.
That's absolutely wild. Maybe Cory Booker could get on top of that.
Exactly. So just closing this page out, this is an interesting story from 2001 where it seems to allege, 2001 figures heavily into the quick few things we're going to talk about on the Clinton Foundation today. But on the bottom of this, it says that people on the advisory board of the library, let's see, keep going down a little bit further. No, I'm sorry, you have to go back.
Is there a reading?
Yeah, right here. A member of the Clinton Library's advisory board, which requires its members to pledge to raise or give $1 million for the library. Okay. First of all, there never was a library advisory board that was legitimate. Okay? And so who are all these people that had agreed to raise or give $1 million for the library? And how could they have done that if none of the paperwork for the foundation, as we're going to show you, was done properly ever in this time frame? And this is a story. This is the New York Post. Occasionally people, like in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, might find themselves interested in reading the New York Post. I mean, I like the cartoons on page 6 and stuff, but look at the date of this. This is a New York Post article. You know, even dopey James Comey should have, who was the U.S. Attorney, this is March 4th, 2001. Okay? The investigation is in full swing.
Now, Fugazi, are they talking about, who's Fugazi?
He was the limousine guy.
Oh, okay, because that's like a hip-hop band.
No. Fugazi was a pre-Uber. It was a legitimate. It was like Carmel or whatever. But anyway, so even dopey James Comey, once he got around to thinking about the Clinton Library, which wasn't until December of 2001, could have had his press people say, have there been any stories written about this Clinton Library at any point that might suggest people were raising money? No. Which, if you do that without registering in New York City, complying with the rules, state, you're breaking the law every time you ask for a piece of money. So how did Bill Fugazi go about trying to secure the $1 million pledge to the Clinton Presidential Library? And this would suggest that he was doing it prior to March 4th, 2001.
Perhaps he knows tigers in high places.
Exactly. So we'll now take you through that. This is not minutia we're going to take you through here, although we do minutia. We like minutia.
Let me guess. This is going to be chapter and verse.
This is just, we take somebody here. This is why I put it in red. Okay, there's this dude, Bill Clinton. He likes to underpay people like Justin Cooper and others to write these 1,000-page tomes, which I was told by a reliable source that the working title for my life was My Struggle. And
until a German friend told him, you might want to change.
Ixnay on that. But forgive me for that. We have a link. We don't have to put it up there, but if you want to see the statutes that do apply about soliciting money from New York, there's a link to them. Now, this book, My Life, the paperback edition, came out on the 31st of May, 2000.
Thomas Spain tells us Fugazi is Sicilian slang for fake.
Oh, there you go.
That's quite interesting.
That is good. So this is in Bill's book. Whether he's going to, I think at one point famously said he lied to his diary, but here he's saying, the sentence actually reads, I was looking, but I changed it to say, on the morning of 20 January 2001, which is really what it meant. I was looking forward to my new life, to building, doesn't say the people of the United States' library, it doesn't say Jason Goodman's library, it says my library. And then he draws an artificial distinction saying, doing public service through my foundation, as if there's a difference between my library and my foundation. At this point, there is no difference between those two things. He did, in early December 2001, create something with Hillary, and I think ultimately Chelsea, called the Clinton Family Foundation up in Chappaqua. He did do that. But that wasn't created on the morning of 20 January 2001, and there wasn't anything that had been created other than the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, which was not allowed to do squatola outside of Little Rock. It just wasn't. And here he admits that the other thing he was going to do was support Hillary, presumably meaning in her political campaigns and also financially.
No, he meant he's literally going to hold her up.
And having more time for the three most important pursuits to him: reading, golf, and unhurried travel. I believe he's kind of leaving chasing women around the world is out of that sentence on purpose. But this book was published. This is the paperback version. You have a link to it, and on pages 950 to 951, step 1, he says that. Then he admits on page 958 he played leading roles, quote, establishing his foundation inside New York. Soon after leaving office in January 2001, I set up, quote, my foundation's headquarters in Harlem and New York City. And we've told you in the past that on the important filing work with the IRS, it says you've got your determination letter, January 29th, 1998. It's premised on the fact that everything you say in the application is going to be true and remain true, and if there are changes, you got to update us. Okay? The application said all work will be done in Little Rock, Arkansas. Period. There's nothing about a new foundation in Harlem in New York City. Nothing about that. And there's nothing about Bill Clinton being involved with that. It's only Skip Rutherford, it's David Pryor, and it's Ann Jordan. Those are the trustees. There's no Bill Clinton involved with this thing, as far as the IRS knows, right? And then he says, once again on page 958, you know, he's reflecting back. This is in May 31st, 2005, when he's got an application in to fight HIV and AIDS internationally illegally that hasn't been approved yet. He's looking back on that. He's being paid handsomely for the paperback and hardback editions of this book. So he's deriving
handsomely.
Yeah, and BKD hasn't begun even a half serious attempt to audit anything to do with the Clinton Foundation at this point. But he's living large, raking in all kinds of cake and money. And it says here, over the last 4 years, I found a good life after the White House. I don't doubt it. It's been full of, and I would have, you know, had I been around the president, ex-president, saying, you know, look, Chief, I mean, I love you, you're the man, I wouldn't use in a sentence anywhere in any book the phrase well-laid plans. I just that's not something that you really want to go with, all right?
No.
And change it, find some other way to describe it. So building my library in Arkansas and my foundation in Harlem. So what did you mean by that? You have two separate things here? You have a library in Arkansas and a foundation in Harlem. Okay, show me the paperwork on that. You know, when did that Harlem-based foundation come into existence? And you're not by chance operating that foundation in the same office that the people of the United States are paying for you know, the presidential office. Well, yes, actually, you're not by chance using the same phones, are you? The same postage requirement, the same people, to, you know, without telling anybody in the IRS about this?
Is that bad?
Exactly. You know, and so I put in that we've done this before, but just to wrap it up for people, I would argue that the Clinton Foundation specializes in the fraud of accomplishing significant diversions, which are defined here. Okay, it's where you take unauthorized conversion or use of the organization's assets other than for the organization's authorized purposes, including, but again, it's not limited to this, including but not limited to embezzlement or theft. And if you go through the technicalities of it, any such diversion of $250,000 or more is a very serious problem. Mm-hmm. Very serious. You go to jail for that.
Well, apparently not.
Well, yeah. Huh. He does have to share houses with Hillary in D.C. and Chappaqua, so that could be for him a bit of hell. But so we go to the next page. So the question then becomes, you know, Bill is fond of, you know, coming up with inventive arguments that make no freaking sense, you know, but there is a sweeping provision here that contemplates a Bill Clinton. Somebody who would say, you know what, I'm just going to do whatever the freak I want to do, but I'm not going to list myself as a chairman or a trustee or whatever. Nobody other than me is going to have any power. You can't write that down because that would be illegal.
Well,
I'm going to be a quote.
Him.
What?
Nobody questions
him. They can't. He'll throw an ice sculpture. I mean, a glass sculpture. But anyway, this is, or worse, this is lifted directly from the 1998 Form 990 instructions, and it says, you know, you got to list out on the 990 every key employee at any time during the year, even if they don't receive any compensation from the organization. That would be Bill Clinton, right? He's not listed. And then it says, a failure to fully complete Part 4, this part, can subject both the organization and the individuals responsible for such failure to penalties for filing an incomplete return. Those penalties are onerous. You know, you don't file a return, but that's the way they began life. We're not going to file returns. Problematic years, we don't do that. Key people, we're not going to tell you anything about that. And it says, a key employee is any person having responsibilities or powers similar to those of officers, directors, or trustees. Clearly, it's Bill Clinton. And you know, you're in an impossible place. Forget Rosenstein, forget Comey, forget Weissman, forget anybody on the special counsel's team. You give me the meanest, nastiest, but principled prosecutor, you know, in the Department of Justice, and you give me the crack team of those FBI agents, not those on crack, but the FBI agents who are really outraged by this behavior over many period. And you look at this, and you sit Bill Clinton, you raid his house, wherever he may be, at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning.
And put CNN out there.
It puts, well, and do it by the book and say, all right, Bill, here's where you are. I'm in trouble. No, you're in deep shit. Because, you either have to defend the proposition that you just stole all this money to cover your personal living and you're not a key person, or you have to admit that you were a key person and you didn't make the requisite disclosure. I mean, you're not in a place now where you're innocent here.
Well, it depends on what your definition of person is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and we're not gonna.
Some of our people in the comments, Charles, have got a lot of very specific questions. They're getting nervous. Someone has said that the statute of limitations on using a private server has run out, but then someone countered with what I think is correct, that if it's found that she was sharing classified information, there's no statute of limitations on that. It's espionage. The other thing that people want to know is, could Obama have pardoned Hillary? And I'm saying that I don't think you can pre-pardon someone. In the case of Nixon and Ford, Nixon was actually charged with something, but not tried or convicted, and Ford pardoned him. Isn't that right?
I think, well, I looked into this, and lawyers I know looked into this and confirmed my analysis. It's really their analysis, that unless there is a secret set of regulations that, super top secret that only former presidents can see, which I don't think there is, the regulations are such that if you're going to pardon somebody, you have to do that by issuing the pardon in the Federal Register. And there's no record of any such pardon of the Clintons. And I was out front on that during the election in 2016, before you and I began, warning people, don't even try this. Just don't try it. Because the other thing you can't do is the crimes that we're talking about here are state and federal and local and foreign crimes. So the only thing the President of the United States can do, easily isn't the right word, but that's readily defended, is to pardon you for a federal crime.
Oh, really?
A crime that you've been, and the tradition is such that you generally don't pardon people who haven't,
paid.
Well, yeah, right. You tend to pardon people, if you look at across many administrations, it tends to be people who pled guilty, who were in prison, who showed remorse at the time of their sentencing, who demonstrated that they made restitution by their good works. They have a long list of things that you can go through, and that's not what these people do.
Well, but certainly Mark Rich didn't do that. I think it's an interesting question, but I think she would at least have to be charged with a crime to be pardoned.
Yeah, I would guess. But so Bill certainly was a key person. Now let's go to the next page, and this is a fun page. Okay. We have Rat Rodenstein, who's got the Summa graduate from Wharton, and he's, went to Harvard Law School, and, Bill's supposed to be pretty smart. Hillary's the smartest person in the world. You have Mueller and Comey and all these people. And these are, to show you a comprehensive list of all the problems would take a long
more paper than exists
in
the world.
So we're not trying to show everything. We're just trying to give you an illustrative dusting of how screwed up this is. So they formed this nonprofit thing in theory on the 23rd of October 1997. We don't really have any evidence yet that that was done wholly properly by actual trustees at that point of the Clinton Foundation. It's possible that it was done properly. It's also possible that it wasn't done properly. But we know that by the 23rd of December 1997, when they send an application across state lines to the IRS seeking federal tax exemption, we know they're lying their asses off at that point. And they're doing it because stars closing in on Clinton, you got the Lewinsky thing bubbling up, all kinds of problems. They've got to wind up their first presidential expense trust. They don't know where they're going to pay for all this stuff. He could have been impeached and convicted. It would have been a financial disaster for him and for the Clintons, and they were,
and the country.
So they submit this. There's no question it was a materially false and misleading application seeking exemption. He meets alone, the records show, and this, I have it, I think, in the next page. He meets alone with Lewinsky at the White House on the 28th of December. While this application, 5 days is in to the IRS, he's meeting alone with Lewinsky, and let's just say having fun
his cigar day.
Exactly. And then he gives this, they're coordinating their testimony, I think, the various people involved.
Bill and Monica?
Bill, Monica, Betty Curry, Vernon Jordan, all these people are,
Why would he expect that any of them would continue to be loyal to him?
Because, he's Bill. He's got the magic, whatever. So he gives this false testimony under oath, and the way he rationalizes it, his face gets all red. He's like, well, this is a lawsuit brought by my political enemies, and because they're my political enemies, that means I look at it through a political prism, and I don't have to answer questions truthfully because these are my enemies.
What?
They're just trying to get me. Can you imagine? Have you tried that? Like the SEC complaint or IRS complaint. This was brought by my political enemies. Of course I couldn't tell the truth. There's no such political enemy exception privilege.
I don't know anything about that.
Anyway, so this is going on. He's testifying falsely. This is a guy who's like, we'll set the foundation up. We'll use that as a slush fund. I know all about that. He's thinking. The IRS says, okay, on that basis, I'll do you a solid. I'll give you this conditional determination letter, which is basically, I'm charitably saying it was granted in error, right?
You are always charitable in your explanation of these things.
Trying to be. So then, of course, we're going to show you in a second that they lie on their IRS forms about whether they're registering in any states. They say they're not. We're going to show you that in a second. But on the 24th of June, 1998, for many months, I have a copy or there's evidence of them having registered June 24th, 1998 in New York across state lines, false, materially misleading declaration under oath.
It's their favorite kind.
Yeah, and then on the 17th of August, 1998, under oath in testimony before the grand jury, Clinton admits that he lied on the 17th of January, 1998. And the story that I'm only really beginning to understand here is that Susan Weber Wright, a judge who becomes aware of this, really gives Bill a pass. Had the public known the true extent of his lies from this immediate moment forward, back in this civil lawsuit, it's highly likely that he would have been convicted, not just impeached and convicted. He would have been not just impeached, but impeached and convicted.
Right.
So we find out is true. We know that they failed to file their tax return for 1997 by this trigger date of the 15th of November. We then have this finding by the Arkansas judge, Susan Weber Wright, that Bill was in civil contempt for false testimony. Remember, this is the guy who's a chief law officer.
What does that mean, civil contempt?
Well, it's not a criminal it's a civil case. But here's the chief legal officer of the country, a man who holds Arkansas bar and at the time Supreme Court bar, and had been the Attorney General, was a Rhodes Scholar. You can't say that, I didn't know I was a lawyer. You mean a lawyer? I thought I was a liar. Anyway. So this happens on the 12th of April, 1999. This is, I guess, he was impeached late in 98 and off the hook. Was he off the hook early in February, I think, in 99? But Weber Wright issues this first finding saying, you're in civil contempt. They submit then a report. The Clinton Foundation submits their 1998 report to New York across state lines. It's false and materially misleading, totally wrong. Then 29th of July, Weber Wright again says, given Bill a chance to contest her finding in April. He doesn't. He's suspended from practicing law in Arkansas for 5 years and fined on the 19th of January, 2001. We've talked about this before. They've opened a criminal investigation into the Clintons by the 15th of February, 2001. They submit another false report to New York concerning 1999 on the 21st of April, 2001. It's well past the November 15th, 2000 deadline. And Bill's suspended from practicing law before the U.S. Supreme Court on the 1st of October, 2001.
Who did he ever represent as a lawyer? Like, you never see anything about his law background.
Well, the point here is that the stuff in red is stuff that should be disclosed. If Bill is a key person in this foundation, opening a headquarters in New York in 2001 and flying around doing HIV/AIDS fighting and climate changing and all the stuff that he's doing, in all these state filings, you have to disclose that somebody who is basically a serial liar and who's prepared to hide behind his exalted position as a former president of the United States is nonetheless going to, operate in a ridiculous fashion. Now, how ridiculous a fashion, you ask? Let's look at the next page.
Swindles, Charles.
Much worse than swindles. Okay, so this is This is even a stupid-ass site, Snopes. We don't even give him the benefit of the link. You know, even Snopes agrees that his licenses were suspended for these issues. Now, what Clinton tries to say, it's all about sex. You know, of course, I'd be an exhibitionist if I didn't try to hide the fact I was having an affair while President of the United States. Wow. No, Bill, that's not the point. You know, it's not the point. You're the President of the United States. The Attorney General actually reports to you. You have a legal background. You should know better. You're in a very high position, and you are lying. You're calling the integrity of the U.S. justice system in question.
Yeah.
You know, by your ridiculous behavior. And this is an excerpt from this is an excellent summary down here. A gentleman, Ronald B. Standler, wrote this piece on the 2nd of October 2004. So that's before the National Archives agreed to accept this fraudulent donation. He writes something saying, you know, look, the president's deposition testimony was intentionally false, okay? Yeah. And his statements about sex with Lewinsky were intentionally false. In sum, the record leaves no doubt that the president violated this court's discovery orders. The court therefore adjudges the president to be in civil contempt of the court, and I love this word, I had to look it up. The president's contumacious conduct.
What does it mean?
Well, good you ask. Contumacious, stubbornly disobedient or rebellious. Here's the link right here.
Very good.
So, I mean, this is, you know, you got this is going on in 2001. You got Dopey James Comey on deck to look into this. You got Rat Rodenstein in the Department of Justice, in theory, looking at all tax prosecutions. You got Bob Mueller comes in on the 4th of September 2001. And nobody sits there and says, you know what? The former President of the United States thinks he's going to basically control a foundation that's going to be raising money all over the world. And in every state, in most localities, in most countries, that he would be involved doing that, you have to disclose the defects in the president's record. You have to do it. You know, because if you don't do it, and people then give the money and think about it, and it's discovered, they can say, you know what? I was defrauded. Had I known that the president was a serial liar who believed that he could lie in any matter that was characterized as being a contest with his political enemies, I wouldn't have given him $25 million. You could see somebody.
I contumaciously object.
Exactly. So go now to the final slide here.
Oh, wow.
And
time flies, Charles.
When we're
no, I think there's one more after this.
I don't think so. Oh, well, there's a few of this transcends, but here's the final slide.
Okay.
So we lay out here just a few things. We've gone, you know, into this before from different perspectives, but for 97 to 2004, you know, you had to submit a complete 990 or IRS form with an audit. You'd be wise to get an accounting firm to give you advice. You certainly want legal advice. And if you're raising money outside Arkansas in 1997 in states like New York, California, you absolutely have to register before you raise money.
Yeah.
So for 1997, the record shows, it has not yet been corrected, that they just say, you know, tax return, those are for suckers. We don't do that. You know, so nothing for 97. On the question of statute of limitations, because there never has been a return filed for 1997, I'm told this is an open matter. You have not filed your returns. You're not in compliance with the law. BKD, even somebody who's remaining at BKD, should be able to say, you know what, this isn't a freaking foundation, and therefore we can't put financial statements out there that don't have a section tax uncertainty that says these yabahos said that they were operating a foundation, but the smartest people in the world couldn't bother to fill out any of the forms, and so now sitting here in 2019, unfortunately, all of their tax returns are in jeopardy, which means we can't give you a clean opinion. I mean, it rises to that seriousness.
I believe the term is jabronis.
Jabronis, okay.
But that speaks to the statute of limitations thing. Even if Hillary can't be put in jail for 30 years, let's say, for espionage, you got hundreds of years of things that could put him in jail for.
Right, and I've always felt, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but I've been involved in fights, tactical fights like this in business. I've always felt the stronger avenue was the tax avenue on the foundation, because it's open and shut.
Right.
And the conspiracy here is not simply the Clinton Foundation. It's why are so many people on Mueller's team and at senior levels in justice and the FBI prepared to allow this obstruction to continue? Is it to try to protect the great and, wonderful Barack Obama? I think it is.
Well, what about Bill and Hillary? I mean, when you're talking about this much stolen money, Charles, that is a lot of payoff money, and the people who don't accept the payoff money, you can pay someone to kill them. I mean, it's a lot of money.
But so what we do here is we see, there's, in my view, there's never been a completed 990. There is certainly not a legally compliant audit. BKD's name is listed on tax forms as having provided tax advice in 98 to 2004. Multiple firms are involved providing legal advice. And though it was required, starting in 1998 for sure, forward, that they register in states truthfully, and when you register in states truthfully back in 1998, most people didn't use the internet for that kind of stuff. You went down, I won't get into this, but you asked somebody working for you to fill out the form, and then you sign it, you send a cover letter.
This is in Charles's world. Ask somebody working for you. Oh, where's all those people working for me?
Right. No, but that's. I mean, I'm talking about Bill Clinton's world was certainly like that.
True.
And the team would say, all right, look, we got some forms.
Anybody know how to write?
And so there are all kinds of forms that have to be filled out. The registration forms, annual reporting forms. And so they take the position, because somebody, when they get around to filing this crap, says, we can't file these freaking forms. We'd be lying. We can't commit all these felonies. So what they say, I got it. What we'll do is on the place on the IRS form where it says, have you filed in any states, we'll say no. But then in the fine print in the back, where you break out, I love breaking down other expenses, we'll leave a line in for all these years that says, registration fees paid, like the first year's state registration fees paid, $6,512.
Oh wow!
So, and the next year it's $8,000, $4,000, $11,000, whatever.
So in other words, they've listed that they've paid in these states, but they haven't actually registered.
Right, and so what we did, a bunch of us, starting in 2015, we began the process, going state by state, and saying, let's see what they did actually do. And if you wanted just to focus on this, you could probably write a 500-page memo of all the many times the Clinton Foundation submitted false and materially misleading, knowingly false and materially misleading statements. Because in most of the states, what it says is that each form is slightly different, and then there's a universal form that some states will allow you to use. It's basically the same. But they ask a lot of tough questions like, have there been any significant diversions of assets? Yes or no? Has anybody been disciplined in a legal proceeding?
Any tigers prepare this?
Right, you're going to need you're going to need a special printer and a lot of ink. Anyway, and then they ask the question, what is the status of your registration in any other state where you've already registered or you're seeking registration? And so there you kind of would want to say, well, I told everybody we're not registered anywhere, but in fact I am registered in all these states, and I've been disciplined 3 times in Mississippi, and I don't want to tell anybody about that. I've been kicked out of West Virginia, and I bounced out of Utah, and Massachusetts is a problem, and my principal fundraiser is all kinds of problems. My political enemies, what would they do with that information? Of course I can't put that in.
Well, this is one of those situations where they have the catch-all, I lied because I thought the truth would upset you.
Exactly. Right. And so along this time frame, what do? They say, well, we really need somebody dumb enough to get involved in this and cover things off for Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton will, he'll be happy. Bill's happy, good things can happen to you.
Was it him?
So we bring first we bring in dopey Andrew Kessel, who doesn't know the difference between a ham sandwich and an audit. And we get him as a CFO. What day does he report to work according to his LinkedIn profile? April Fool's Day.
Oh, right.
Nothing. The universe was kind of trying to get the message to you, Andrew. It's not looking too good what you're doing here. And then Andrew gets together and says, I have the firm. There's only one firm whose mascot is a tiger. Or who's a managing partner or operator, whatever he is, chief operating partner, loves the Missouri Tigers. We got to get BK. And when you've got an obvious fraud that you want to cover up, what do? You call BKD, right? Their real name is BAD, but they changed the A to a K to try to trick you.
Their mascot is the Smiling Tigers.
Right. So, this again, I promised I wouldn't go into minutia here. This is just giving you kind of setting the stage for the complaints that the Clinton Foundation should assume are wending their way and have been wending their way around different places, different governments around the world. This is not a case where you can say, as your defense, shit happens. We tried our best. We didn't really have the resources we needed.
Seal scat happens.
Yeah, that's right. Seal scat. There's a ring to it. You can't say, well, I gave my records. I hired Elizabeth Warren, this crack lawyer, as in drugs, and she took all the records and she hid them in her wigwam. That's not a defense here. And you can't, as the IRS say, what we're going to do is we're going to put an African American woman, Corinne Brown, in prison for 5 years for a trivial, less than $1 million, 20-year pattern of fraud, compared to this $3 billion plus pattern of fraud,
right,
by people who to this day think that they should live in dual mansions with a tidy bowl server system probably still operating and flying private jets only and getting ready to who knows to buy what for Chelsea Clinton for her third child. This double standard here is so great, and we've news in from Shifty Adam Schiff that didn't listen to Trump, and he's going to today announce that his committee, I forget is the Lack of Intelligence Committee or the Oversight Committee. I guess it's the Lack of Intelligence Committee. He is going to go all in against Trump, and then we have this John Solomon story that just came.
Got the Adam Schiff thing right there.
Sweeping investigation of Trump finances in Russia.
But here's the thing. Here's what I want to ask, because isn't it the whole innocent until proven guilty and freedom from unreasonable search and seizure, aren't they specifically not allowed to just continually investigate someone they don't like until they find a crime, particularly after they've been investigating him for 2 years and so far have found no evidence that he's actually done anything?
I don't know. I think the way this would work is, Schiff and his people would say, we have a legitimate interest here in providing congressional oversight, and if we overstep our bounds, we're going to lose the election. That would be probably the arguments. And of course, you get all these talking heads. You go to the Senate intelligence person. You try to talk to the lead investigator over there, but he was bounced out for screwing a New York Times reporter and leaking information, and who knows what's happening.
What was that guy's name again? Wolf something?
I don't know, but it was.
Everybody's screwing people with the New York Times.
Stuck on stupid. But Donald Trump, it wasn't like he was, indirect and saying, I really think that it would be not necessarily the wisest move to allocate resources to investment. He said, listen, don't be a dumbass. Don't, you come at me with this type of approach, and it's going to hurt. And so what does this Shifty Adam Schiff do? 4:33 today?
4:33?
Yeah. Comes out and says, I listened carefully to the president.
Why did you mention that it was 4:33?
You'll see it there. 4:33 p.m. And, he's out there saying, no, I listened carefully to the president, and, I'm just going to do what I want to do because I'm Adam Schiff.
This guy's going nowhere.
Yeah.
Total loser.
Yeah. So then we have the other story, the Mueller story. This is, John Solomon put this out at 3:30 today.
3:30?
There you
Damn,
go.
Look at that. Huh.
And this is basically saying that Mueller had been hauled before the secret FISA court to address abuses back in 2002.
And Congress is just being told this now?
Well, it's being reported out now, but this is, so when you talk about Mueller abusing the FISA system, Rosenstein abusing the FISA system,
maybe just a Wednesday.
Yeah, but it's not okay. It's not okay to have a FISA court. And I don't like the FISA court, period.
Yeah.
But I don't like the principle that, for foreign intelligence matters, we're going to say that it's okay for the FBI to, get warrants to spy on Americans with no ability for the American to say, wait a minute, accuse me of a crime here. I'm innocent until proven guilty. Give me a chance to defend myself. No, you just say to Bob Mueller and whoever else may succeed him, now Christopher Wray, no. What we'll do is, we can't let Trump or a conservative Republican or an anti-swamp person run this country. Of course, it's a threat to our livelihood. These are our political enemies we're talking about. We have to be able to bury them. This is again, you talked about the doctor. There is no such equivalent to the hypocritical oath, or what's it called, Hippocratic oath, for lawyers. But there is the bar. Professional.
Have a few drinks if the case doesn't go the way you like.
No, but there's the code of professional conduct I would hope bar Robert Mueller from continuing to serve in any position, having any position of trust. If he's been doing this for 17 years that we know about, and then you get into the whole Whitey Bulger thing and the other abuses that Hannity and others have been talking about. This is. I
think they had Whitey Bulger killed.
But this is these, as Barack Obama so famously said, these are not our values, and they just aren't. And Robert Mueller looks the waspy, St. Paul's graduate, Princeton, etc., stiff upper lip kind of give me 17 martinis guy. But this behavior is just reprehensible behavior, and that the government bodies would sit and allow this to go on for so long. As a guest, we also got from one of these fantastic listeners of ours, viewers, I mentioned that I suspected that it wasn't just 400 FBI files that the Clintons vacuumed up. And this person claims on good authority that it's more like 8,000.
Wow.
And it's not the official files, it's the it's stuff that hasn't yet actually made it into the file.
So just evidence.
Well, it's dirt. I mean, we see how easy it is for the FBI to open an investigation and for rogue people to do what they want to do within the FBI, and they never get punished. That's just not right. We did not, I didn't sign up to live in East Germany. I don't think people on the left signed up to be living in East Germany.
They seem to want that, though.
Not when they think about it.
No, but you just made a critical error charge.
That's
exactly. They're not going to think. Well, these are some rogue, angry turds that you've discussed with us today, Charles.
Right.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive overview. I do want to remind our viewers that Crowdsource the Truth is community sponsored, and without the viewers' sponsorship, we just can't carry on. There's been a lot of people trying to tear down Crowdsource the Truth. So I hope that people will go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become sponsors. They can also go to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth and make a one-time sponsorship payment. And as of today, we have a new option, and that is subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. This is a new competitor to Patreon that's going to give you access to all of the exclusive videos. So people who don't like Patreon can join us on Subscribestar, and anyone who sponsors the show for $10 in any of these sites is going to get the wildly popular Sunday with Charles screensaver. We're just barreling towards volume 2 of the screensaver, and I don't know, maybe I'll make volume 1 discontinued after that, so it'll be a rare
collector's
collectible.
item.
Right, exactly. So people want to get in there and sponsor the show right away. Charles, thank you again for another excellent program. I'll be back tomorrow with the intelligence assessment with Kevin Shipp. Now, Kevin has been having some internet problems. I haven't been able to communicate with him too much, so we'll make sure that that's going to be on. But barring any technical difficulties, that's a show that always appears on our subscriber-only channel. So I hope we'll see people there. And Charles, I look forward to Sunday.
Looking forward myself.
Thanks for watching, everybody.